The ancient stone tablets lay buried beneath 3 meters of Martian dust, their surfaces covered in symbols that made Dr. Elena Vasquez's hands shake as she carefully brushed away millennia of accumulated debris. The archaeological dig site on Mars had been routine until this moment, until these mysterious carvings emerged from the red soil like whispers from a forgotten past. "Get Commander Chen down here immediately," Elena called to her assistant Marcus, who was documenting the dig from above the excavation pit. Her voice carried an urgency that cut through the thin Martian atmosphere. The symbols weren't Martian. They weren't from any known civilization in the galaxy. But somehow, impossibly, they depicted humans. Crude but unmistakable representations of bipedal figures with the characteristic proportions of Homo sapiens. And they were old, very old. Commander Sarah Chen rappelled into the dig site within minutes, her military-issue environmental suit making soft mechanical sounds as she moved. As the head of the Mars Research Station, she'd seen her share of unusual discoveries, but the expression on Elena's face told her this was different. "What am I looking at, Dr. Vasquez?" Chen's voice was steady, professional, but Elena could hear the underlying tension. "These tablets predate human civilization by at least 50,000 years, Elena said, her breath fogging the inside of her helmet. "But look at this section here." She pointed to a series of interconnected symbols. "These aren't just pictures of humans, they're warnings." The central panel showed human figures surrounded by what appeared to be stars and planets. But the humans weren't peaceful explorers or primitive cave dwellers. They were depicted with tools that looked disturbingly similar to modern weapons, standing over fallen creatures that resembled other known sentient species from across the galaxy. Warnings about what? Chen knelt beside Elena, studying the ancient stone. "About us," Elena whispered. "About what we would become." Marcus's voice crackled through their comm system from above. "Commander, we're receiving an urgent transmission from Earth Station Alpha. They say it's Priority 1. Chen stood, her joints protesting in the lower Martian gravity. "Patch it through." The holographic display materialized between them, showing the worried face of Admiral Rebecca Torres, Earth's military commander. The transmission delay meant this message had been sent hours ago. "Commander Chen, we have a situation. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures moving toward our solar system. We've just received confirmation it's a fleet. Alien ships, at least 1,000 of them, possibly more. They'll reach Earth in 72 hours. Elena's blood ran cold. She looked down at the tablets, at the ancient warnings carved in stone. The timing couldn't be coincidental. "There's more," Admiral Torres continued. "We've attempted communication, but they're not responding to any of our signals. However, our xenolinguists have intercepted some of their internal communications. They keep mentioning one word in various alien languages, and when translated, it all means the same thing." Chen gripped her helmet tighter. "What word?" "Death Worlders." The transmission ended, leaving them in the stark silence of the Martian landscape. Elena stared at the tablets, and for the first time she noticed something she'd missed before. In the corner of the central panel, there was a symbol that looked like a countdown, a series of marks that could represent time passing. "Commander," she said slowly, "I think these tablets aren't just warnings about humans. I think they're warnings about what happens when humans are threatened." Chen's comm system chirped with an incoming message from Earth. This one was even more urgent. "All stations, this is Admiral Torres. The alien fleet has accelerated. They'll reach Earth in 12 hours, not 72. All military personnel return to Earth immediately. This is not a drill." As they scrambled to pack up the dig site, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. The warnings had been there all along, carved in stone by a civilization that had encountered humans long before humans had even developed written language. But who had carved these warnings? And why had they known what humanity would become? The answer to that question would change everything they thought they knew about human history and humanity's place in the galaxy. Chapter 2. The fleet arrives. 12 hours later, Elena stood in the observation deck of the emergency transport, ship racing toward Earth, watching as the alien fleet materialized out of the darkness of space like a constellation of death. The ships were massive, each one easily the size of a city, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "They're not responding to any diplomatic channels," reported Captain James Mitchell, the transport ship's commander. His voice was tight with controlled fear. "Earth's government has been trying to establish communication for the past 6 hours. Elena clutched the digital copies of the Martian tablets she'd managed to save. The images on her tablet seemed to pulse with new meaning as she watched the alien armada position itself in Earth's orbit. She'd spent the entire journey analyzing. The symbols and what she'd discovered made her stomach turn. "Captain," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "these tablets, they're not just warnings about humans, they're instructions." Mitchell turned from the viewport, his scarred face creased with concern. "Instructions for what?" "For how to kill us." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Elena pulled up the enhanced images on the main display. "Look at this section here." She pointed to a series of complex symbols. "These aren't random drawings. They're tactical diagrams, battle formations, weapon specifications. This entire section is a manual for warfare against humans." Commander Chen, who had remained unusually quiet during the journey, stepped forward. "Dr. Vasquez, are you saying that whoever carved these tablets was planning to attack humanity?" "No," Elena said, her voice growing stronger as the pieces fell into place. "I think they were warning other species about what would happen if they attacked humanity. These aren't instructions for killing humans. They're warnings about what humans are capable of when they're fighting for survival." As if to prove her point, the comm system crackled to life with a transmission from Earth's military command. "All civilian vessels, maintain minimum safe distance. Military Response Protocol 7 is now in effect." Elena had never heard of Protocol 7, but the look on Captain Mitchell's face told her it wasn't good. "What's Protocol 7? She asked. Mitchell's jaw tightened. "Total war doctrine. No rules of engagement. No mercy." The alien fleet began to move, their massive ships descending toward Earth's atmosphere. But they moved slowly, almost cautiously, as if they were expecting something. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. It's in multiple languages, human languages." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was cold, mechanical, but unmistakably intelligent. "Species of the third planet, you have been judged according to the ancient records. Your kind has been marked as Deathworlders, a threat to galactic peace. Surrender now, and your extinction will be swift." Elena's blood ran cold. "They know about the tablets. They've seen the warnings. But they're here anyway," Chen observed. "That means they either don't believe the warnings, or they think they can handle whatever humans can do." The alien voice continued. "You have 1 standard hour to respond. Failure to surrender will result in the activation of planetary sterilization protocols." Elena looked at the tablets again, focusing on the final panel, the one that showed human figures not fleeing or hiding but advancing, fighting, winning. "Captain," she said urgently, "we need to get to Earth's military command. I think these tablets don't just show what happens when humans are attacked. I think they show how humans respond when they're cornered. And what does that mean?" Elena pointed to the final symbol on the tablets, a representation of humans standing among the stars. But this time, they weren't surrounded by other species. They were alone. "I think it means that every other species that tried to wipe out humanity, they're gone now." The hour was almost up and Earth had not responded to the alien ultimatum, but Elena noticed something else. Smaller ships were beginning to emerge from Earth's surface, moving with a precision and coordination that suggested they'd been preparing for this moment for far longer than anyone had realized. The real question wasn't whether humanity would survive this encounter. The question was whether anyone else would. Chapter 3. The Truth Unveiled. Elena's transport ship docked at Earth Station Alpha just as the first shots were fired. The alien fleet had opened fire precisely on schedule, their energy weapons carving brilliant lines across Earth's atmosphere. But something was wrong. Their shots were missing their targets by impossibly small margins, as if Earth's defensive systems knew exactly where the attacks would come from. Racing through the station's corridors, Elena clutched her tablet containing the translated symbols. She'd made another breakthrough during the final approach, one that changed everything she thought she knew about the tablets. Admiral Torres met them at the command center, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, and her uniform bearing the insignia of battles Elena had never heard of. "Dr. Vasquez, Commander Chen, we've been expecting you. I understand you have information about our visitors." "Admiral," Elena said breathlessly, "the tablets aren't from an alien civilization. They're from us, from humans." Torres didn't look surprised. "Explain." Elena activated her tablet, projecting the images onto the command center's main display. "I've been analyzing the dating methods. These tablets are old, yes, but not as old as I first thought. They were created approximately 12,000 years ago, right around the time human civilization was supposedly just beginning." "Supposedly?" Chen asked. "Admiral." Elena turned to Torres. "How long has humanity been traveling in space?" Torres was quiet for a long moment, then made a decision that would change Elena's understanding of human history forever. "Show her the archives, Lieutenant." A young officer activated a classified database, and Elena's tablet filled with images, documents, and records that dated back thousands of years. Star maps showing human settlements across the galaxy, battle records from wars against dozens of different species, archaeological evidence of human colonies on worlds that official history claimed had never been explored. "We've been out here for over 10,000 years, Torres said quietly. "Not as explorers, as conquerors." Elena stared at the records, her mind reeling. The tablets. They weren't warnings to other species about what humans might become. They were warnings about what humans had already done. Every aggressive species that humanity encountered was given the same choice we're giving this fleet now, Torres continued. Coexist peacefully or be eliminated. Most chose to fight. The command center's tactical display showed the battle, raging around Earth. The alien fleet was massive, their technology advanced, but they were fighting with the desperation of species who had heard the stories but never believed them. "How many species have we?" Elena couldn't finish the question. 47 aggressive civilizations have been eliminated over the past 10 millennia, Torres said matter-of-factly. "Not species, civilizations. The species themselves often survived on their homeworlds, but their ability to wage war across the galaxy was permanently disabled." Elena looked at the tablets again, seeing them with new eyes. The human figures weren't primitive representations. They were simplified tactical symbols, the kind used in military briefings. The countdown she'd noticed wasn't measuring time. Until an attack, it was measuring the standard time given to each species to make their choice between peace and destruction. The reason these tablets were buried on Mars, Elena realized, is because Mars was never our first colony. It was our first military base. Correct. Mars has been the staging ground for humanity's defensive operations for millennia. Every time an aggressive species threatens Earth, Mars Command coordinates the response. Elena watched the battle displays, seeing human ships moving with a precision that spoke of thousands of years of experience. The alien fleet was powerful, but they were fighting against a species that had been perfecting the art of war since before recorded history. "The reason no one believed the warnings," Elena said slowly, "is because the survivors never talked about it. The species that encountered humans and lived were the ones that chose peace immediately. And the ones that chose war," Torres finished, "never had a chance to warn anyone else." Elena looked at the tactical display again. The alien fleet was already in retreat, their massive ships limping away from Earth's defensive perimeter. They had lasted less than 3 hours against humanity's response. "Admiral," Elena asked, "what happens now?" To them, Torres studied the retreating ships. The same thing that happens to all species that attack Earth. They'll be allowed to return to their homeworld, but their fleet will be permanently disabled. Their military technology will be neutralized. They'll never be a threat to anyone again. And the warnings will be updated and distributed, just like always. Other species will have the opportunity to learn from their mistake. Elena realized that humanity's greatest achievement wasn't exploration or diplomacy or even technology. It was the creation of a galaxy where the only species capable of large-scale warfare was humanity itself. And humanity had chosen to use that monopoly to enforce peace rather than conquest. The tablets hadn't been warnings about humans becoming dangerous. They were proof that humans had become the galaxy's ultimate peacekeepers, one civilization at a time. But Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of the story. The tablets had shown something else, something she was only beginning to understand. And if she was right, humanity's greatest test was still ahead. Chapter 4. The Ancient Enemy. 3 days after the alien fleet's retreat, Elena made the discovery that would change humanity's understanding of its own history forever. Deep in the classified archives Admiral Torres had granted her access to, she found records that predated even the oldest tablets on Mars. Commander Chen, Elena called urgently from her temporary office in Earth Station Alpha. You need to see this. Chen arrived to find Elena surrounded by holographic displays showing star charts, archaeological records, and symbols that were hauntingly familiar, yet distinctly different from the Martian tablets. I've been tracing back the origins of humanity's expansion into space, Elena explained, her voice tight with excitement and fear. The official records show us fighting 47 different aggressive civilizations over 10,000 years. But there's something the records don't show, something that's been classified at the highest levels. What? Elena activated a new display, showing a star map with a distinctive pattern of dead systems, entire solar systems with no life, no planets, no stars. Just empty space arranged in a perfect spiral pattern leading toward Earth. Before humanity became the galaxy's peacekeepers, something else held that role, something that was systematically eliminating every form of intelligent life in the galaxy, including the early human colonies. Chen studied the pattern. What kind of enemy could destroy entire star systems? Not an enemy, Elena said quietly. A force. Something that the earliest human records called the silence. A phenomenon that moved through space, consuming not just life, but the very matter that life required to exist. She pulled up another display, showing symbols carved into the hulls of ancient human ships, symbols that were clearly the precursors to the warnings found on Mars. The tablets on Mars weren't the first warnings about humanity, they were the last. The first warnings were about something else entirely, something that humanity fought and apparently defeated. Chen's face went pale. Are you saying that humanity's expansion across the galaxy wasn't conquest, it was survival? More than that, it was containment. Every species that humanity eliminated over the past 10,000 years wasn't eliminated because they were threats to Earth. They were eliminated because they were being influenced by something that was trying to use them as weapons against the last free civilization in the galaxy. Elena activated the final display, showing a reconstruction of the galaxy as it had existed 12,000 years ago, where there were now hundreds of peaceful species and thriving civilizations. The map showed vast empty regions, entire spiral arms of the galaxy that had been completely sterilized. The silence didn't just destroy civilizations, it used them. It would infiltrate their technology, their communication systems, their collective consciousness, and turn them into tools for spreading its influence. The only species that proved immune was humanity. But if we defeated this silence, Chen asked, why the continued military buildup? Why the ongoing elimination of aggressive species? Elena pointed to the most recent star charts. Because it's not defeated. It's dormant. And every aggressive civilization that attacks Earth isn't acting independently. They're being influenced by remnants of the silence, testing humanity's defenses, looking for weaknesses. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't become the galaxy's dominant military force through conquest or aggression. They'd become the galaxy's immune system, the only species capable of resisting an existential threat that had already consumed most of the known universe. Elena, Chen said slowly, if this is true, then why has this information been classified? Why doesn't the general population know about humanity's real history? Elena pulled up one final document, a psychological analysis of human behavior that was thousands of years old. Because the knowledge itself is dangerous. The silence doesn't just use technology and communication systems. It uses knowledge, memory, shared consciousness. The more people who know about it, the easier it becomes for it to find a way back. So the warnings on Mars were never meant to warn other species about humanity. They were meant to warn humanity about what would happen if the silence ever fully awakened. Every species that humanity has eliminated was a potential vector for that awakening. Chen stared at the displays, understanding dawning in her eyes. The alien fleet that just attacked Earth, they weren't just aggressive, they were infected. And now they know that humanity is still actively resisting, which means Elena's comm system activated with an urgent transmission from Admiral Torres. Dr. Vasquez, Commander Chen, report to Battle Command immediately. We have a situation. When they arrived at Battle Command, they found Torres studying readings from deep space monitors that showed something that made Elena's blood run cold. The alien fleet that retreated 3 days ago, Torres said without preamble. They didn't return to their homeworld. They've been broadcasting a signal that's been spreading across the galaxy, reaching every known civilization. What kind of signal? Elena asked, though she was afraid she already knew. A wake-up call, Torres replied grimly. After 10,000 years of keeping it dormant, the silence is beginning to stir. Elena looked at the ancient symbols one more time, understanding finally dawning. The countdown on the Martian tablets hadn't been measuring time until an attack. It had been measuring time until humanity's greatest enemy returned, and that countdown had just reached 0. Epilogue. The choice 6 months later. Elena stood in the command center of humanity's most advanced battle station, watching as the last of the evacuation ships departed from Earth. The planet below was being transformed into something it had never been before. A fortress world, prepared for a war that would determine the fate of not just humanity, but every remaining civilization in the galaxy. The silence had awakened fully now, and its influence was spreading faster than humanity's fleets could contain it. Entire sectors of the galaxy had gone dark, their civilizations converted into extensions of something that existed beyond normal understanding of life and death. Status report, Elena asked Commander Chen, who now wore the insignia of Admiral of the fleet. We've successfully evacuated all non-essential personnel from the core worlds, Chen replied. The remaining population consists entirely of military personnel and essential scientific staff. Total numbers, approximately 50 million humans across 12 worlds. And the infected civilizations? Approaching our outer defensive perimeter. Estimated time until first contact, 14 hours. Elena nodded, turning her attention to the massive holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Where once there had been thousands of points of light representing thriving civilizations, now there were vast regions of emptiness punctuated by the sickly glow of systems that had been converted by the silence. But there was something else on the display, something that gave Elena hope. Around each of humanity's remaining worlds, space itself seemed to shimmer with a different kind of energy, the same energy that had kept the silence dormant for 10,000 years. Dr. Vasquez, a young technician, called out, "We're receiving a transmission. It's from the silence itself." Elena exchanged glances with Chen. In all the ancient records, there had never been any mention of the silence communicating directly with humanity. Put it through. The voice that emerged from the speakers was unlike anything Elena had ever heard, not mechanical like the infected species they'd encountered before, but something that seemed to exist in the spaces between. Sounds in the silence between words. Children of the third world, it said. and Elena could feel the words in her mind as much as hear them with her ears. For 10,000 cycles you have resisted. For 10,000 cycles you have prevented the completion of the great work. Why? Elena looked at Chen, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, Elena activated the communication system. Because your great work requires the destruction of everything we consider valuable, she replied. Life, consciousness, choice, growth, all of it would be eliminated. Eliminated? No. Perfected, unified, made eternal. Made empty, Elena countered. We've seen what your perfection looks like. It's death wearing the mask of peace. The silence was quiet for a long moment, and Elena could feel something vast and ancient considering her words. You are the only species to resist completely, it finally said. Even when offered power beyond imagination, even when faced with extinction, your kind chooses struggle over surrender. Why? Elena thought about all the warnings carved in stone, all the civilizations that had fallen, all the battles that had been fought to reach this moment. Because we're not afraid of being imperfect, she said. We're not afraid of making mistakes, of growing, of changing. We're not afraid of being human. And yet, the silence replied, you have become the galaxy's greatest warriors. You have eliminated more civilizations than any species in known history. To protect them from you, to give them the chance to grow without your influence. Protection, growth, choice. The silence seemed to taste the words. Concepts that lead to chaos, to suffering, to the endless repetition of conflict. And to beauty, Elena added, to love, to discovery, to the possibility that tomorrow might be better than today. The communication ended abruptly, leaving the command center in tense silence. Elena looked at the display showing the approaching infected fleets, knowing that humanity's response to the silence's offer would determine not just their own survival, but the future of consciousness itself in the galaxy. Admiral Chen, Elena said formally, I recommend we implement the final protocol. Chen nodded grimly. The final protocol was humanity's ultimate contingency, a way to ensure that even if they lost the coming battle, the silence would never again be able to spread beyond the boundaries they had established. All stations, Chen announced over the fleet-wide communication system. This is Admiral Chen. In 14 hours, we will face an enemy that has consumed most of the known galaxy. They have offered us the choice between surrender and extinction. But they've forgotten something important about humanity. Elena watched as the crew around her straightened, their faces showing not fear but determination. We've never accepted that those were the only two options, Chen continued. Today we offer the silence a third choice, coexistence on our terms, or containment forever. As the final preparations began, Elena looked one last time at the ancient warnings that had started her journey. The tablets had been right all along. When humanity was cornered, when everything they valued was threatened, they didn't surrender, and they didn't simply fight. They won. But the real victory wouldn't be measured in battles won or enemies defeated. It would be measured in the civilizations that would continue to grow, to choose, to make their own mistakes and discover their own beauties in a galaxy that remained free. Elena took her position at the tactical console, knowing that in a few hours, the ancient warnings would either be proven prophetic, or humanity would write a new ending to the story that had begun 10,000 years ago. Either way, the galaxy would remember that when faced with the choice between perfect order and imperfect freedom, humanity had chosen to remain human. The countdown began, and Elena smiled. The end.